returns to Part 1. Part 1.
You will hear a woman phoning about her membership of a carpool, a type of car-sharing organisation. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hello, your carpool. How can I help?
Oh, hello. Look, I used one of the cars earlier and I want to complain. I'm not one to make a fuss usually, but this isn't the first time there's been a problem. I'm getting fed up with it.
I'm sorry to hear that. Can I take your membership number first?
Yes, it's 520016.
520016. Is that Julie speaking?
Yes, Julie Gold.
Hi, Julie. Now, let me just check your booking. Your complaint's about the most recent booking, is it?
Well, yes, this complaint is. But like I say, it's not the first.
Okay. So that was the Fiat. Registration number YPT723S in City Street this morning at 10:30?
Yes, that's it. But no, I think it was the car in Baker Road.
My records say City Street. That's the grey Fiat.
Oh, yes, Baker Road was yesterday.
And that booking was fine?
Well, yes, that one was.
Good. So what exactly was the problem today then?
Now you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen to the rest of the conversation and answer questions 5 to 10.
OK, I went to pick the car up and it wasn't in the parking bay. I was in quite a hurry and I have to say it was very stressful. Of course, I thought somebody else still had the car out. Anyway, I was about to phone when I saw the car on the other side of the street about 100 metres down. Can't you make it clear to users that they have to park the cars back in the bays?
Well, yes we do. If I had to guess, I'd say that the previous user left it there because the bay was occupied. We'll phone to check and find out, but that's the most likely explanation.
But people aren't supposed to be occupying the parking bays, are they?
Well, no, but they do. They usually think it's okay to park for a few minutes.
Well, in that case, shouldn't members wait until somebody comes back to get their vehicle? I mean, in that situation, I always hoot and keep on hooting to alert the car owner to the fact I'm there and that I expect them to move. It usually takes only a few minutes. I wish people would show a little more patience.
As I say, I'll phone and...
There are other things I want to discuss. When I did eventually get to the car, I was shocked at how filthy it was, both inside and out. The wheels and the bottom of the vehicle were covered in mud. Inside, the carpets were muddy too, and the back seat covered in dog hair. It's pretty obvious that the last user had driven out to the country to take his dogs out walking. Can't there be some rules about what people can and can't use the cars for?
I hear what you're saying, Julie. I think this is a fair point and I'm very sorry. I certainly will call the previous user to take this up.
And make sure that the cars are given a decent valeting every so often. Right, one more thing. Once I dusted off the seat and found the keys, I expected them to be left under a seat or in the door compartment. I finally started up the engine. I was dismayed to see how low the fuel gauge was. This has been the case before, and it's really annoying. I thought the membership regulations state quite clearly that it's the driver's responsibility to fill up when the gauge goes below the quarter full mark. Am I right?
Yes, that is what we say.
So how come I had to sort that out before I could get on with my journey?
Look, I think all things considered, we'll compensate you for your experience today. How does that sound, Julie?
Are you going to scrap the payment for today's booking?
Well, I could do that, but now the booking's on the system, it's complicated. I'd rather offer you complimentary hours. Today's booking was for 4 hours, so we'll say you have 4 hours of uncharged usage taken off your next bill.
But what if my next booking is for less than 4 hours?
Don't worry, the booking will not be charged and the remaining amount will automatically go forward to the booking after that. All you have to do is key free hours into the comments option when you make the booking online.
Okay, I guess I should say thank you, but I'm still very cross.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a presenter on a radio phone-in show. The presenter is talking to a woman who was bitten by a poisonous spider.
Now you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Today we're continuing our Traveller's Tales. On the line we have Amanda Toddington, who had quite a nasty experience in Australia last year. Isn't that right, Amanda?
Yes. My husband and I were on holiday and we were staying at a friend's house on the coast near Brisbane. It was towards the end of the holiday and I was about to go into the garden and enjoy my breakfast. I walked out into the kitchen, slid my left foot into my shoe and felt a tiny sting. It was pretty painless, but I shook the shoe off my foot and saw this tiny spider running out as the shoe hit the wall. Anyway, not being an expert, I presumed the worst, that I'd been bitten by something that was going to kill me, and I completely lost control. I don't think I've ever screamed so much in all my life. We'd been told beforehand to always check our shoes before putting them on, as it's a common way to get bitten, so I suppose it was my own fault, really.
So what was it that had bitten you?
Tony, that's our Australian friend, he immediately asked me if I knew what had bitten me, and I pointed to the corner of the room where I'd last seen the spider. He picked up a jar and found the creature in the corner where the shoe had hit the floor. "It's a redback," he said, and he gently placed the jar over the spider. The funny thing was, we'd been talking about some of the creatures we needed to be careful of a few days previously, and as he said the name redback, the conversation came flooding back to me. In particular, the fact that the bite can be extremely painful. I've found out since that the redback is from the same family as the black widow spider, and it's the female that does the damage, which it turned out was what I'd been bitten by.
You must have been absolutely petrified.
You can say that again. I remember feeling quite confused. I wasn't in a great deal of pain to begin with, and yet I could see from our friends' faces that they were concerned. Tony explained that the venom or poison of the bite spreads quite slowly, so the pain doesn't feel too bad at first. Gwen, Tony's wife, brought an ice pack, and Tony held it against the bite to make it less painful. Apparently, you're not supposed to put a bandage on the area, as this can make it hurt even more. Tony tried to put my mind at rest by explaining that this was quite a common bite, that the hospital would have an antivenom, and that everything would be okay. But I was beginning to panic. We were flying back to the UK the next day, and I really didn't know what to do.
Now you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 16 to 20.
So, what did you do?
Well, Tony phoned the doctor, who told him to check my symptoms for the next hour or two. As time went on, the pain became very intense, from my foot right up to my knee. My husband was on the internet and was reading out the possible symptoms. I wasn't feeling sick, and I hadn't yet developed a fever, but I had a terrible headache, and my foot was beginning to swell up. At this point, Tony decided to take me to the local hospital to be on the safe side. I really didn't want to go, as I had visions of being kept in for days and all our plans being spoilt. But Tony and my husband insisted. When we got to the hospital, I was relieved to see how casual everyone was when Tony explained I'd been bitten by a redback spider. They told me to take a seat and got on with their work.
And did you receive any treatment?
By the time I got to see a doctor, the pain was very intense indeed, and I was getting quite upset. The doctor decided to give me a dose of an antivenom, which he assured me would eventually deal with the problem. Unfortunately, he also explained that it wouldn't have an immediate effect, and the symptoms might last for several days. But the story has a happy ending. My husband managed to book us onto another plane 1 week later. And even better news was that the symptoms of the bite finally cleared up after about 24 hours. Within a couple of days, I was back to normal again. So thanks to the spider, we managed to extend our holiday by a week.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 3. Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between a university tutor and a student who has recently started at the university. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 25.
Anyway, as this is our first session, I'd just like to find out how you're settling in, how your Spanish course is going. Basically, anything you feel you need to talk about.
I'm okay, I suppose. I'm settling into my studies, and I'm finding the course interesting. I've got a free day on Wednesday, which is good, and the lectures and tutorials on the other 4 days. Yeah, I'm getting into the swing of things. I'm just missing home a little, that's all.
Okay, well, if it makes you feel any better, I reckon half the students I speak with are a little homesick. It's only natural. Is this the first time you've lived away from home?
Yes, I was thinking just this morning that I've never spent so long away from my friends and family before. I've been back home on one occasion since I started in September, but it's so expensive to get down to London by train that I can't go very often.
Well, don't be too hard on yourself, Kevin. It's quite a lot to deal with at first, isn't it? Moving to a new city, being responsible for everything for the first time ever, shopping, cooking, etc. Then making new friends, and then there's your studies, of course, and getting organised. Are you living on campus or in town?
On campus, in halls of residence. It's not as cheap as renting a room in a house, but I thought it would be a good way of meeting new students. We're all in and out of the kitchen during the day, so it's not difficult to socialise. Like you say, I'm just a bit homesick.
I'm sure that you'll find things get better over the next few weeks. Everything's new for you at the moment and a little overwhelming, but you'll get into a routine and start to feel more settled. What about Freshers' Week? Did you sign up for anything?
Yes, I've joined a couple of groups. There's the Film Society, and a tutor recommended the Spanish Society, so I've signed up for that too. I've volunteered to help out on their International Food Day, making snacks, that kind of thing, and I'm looking forward to getting to know other members.
You said earlier you were finding your studies okay, so that's good as well. The main thing to remember is to try to be as organised as possible. You have so much more freedom to make your own decisions here, so it's important to structure your time to factor in time for studies. If you're on top of your work, you'll feel much more able to enjoy your free time.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
I was hoping you could help me with my essay writing. I seem to be spending ages writing and rewriting essays and, well...
The best bet is for you to sign up to the University Writing Tutorial Service. They have people who are in place to support students specifically with these problems. To join, just fill in the application form and give them a sample of your work.
Brilliant! I didn't know anything about that. Can I give them one of my essays to look at?
They won't give you feedback on a complete essay, I'm afraid, as they may not be subject experts. It's really aimed at developing your academic writing skills. Ideally, you should write something between 1,000 to 1,500 words. If you find their page on the university website, they've got a list of general topics you can try.
So, do I just turn up, or do I need to make an appointment? I've got an essay deadline coming up soon, so I'd like to get help as soon as possible.
You'll need to arrange an appointment. The first step is to sign up for the service. Download the application form and essay title from the webpage. Don't forget to state when you're available for tutorials on the form. Email the essay and form to the team, and they'll get back to you with an appointment time. It usually takes about 1 week from when they first receive your essay to arrange an appointment. You're usually given 1 tutorial a term, but they may offer you further sessions if they think you need them.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks for your help.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4. Part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about the film director Alfred Hitchcock.
Now you have some time to look at questions 31 to 34. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 34.
We've been talking about prominent film directors, and today I want to talk about one of the most influential directors of them all, Sir Alfred Hitchcock. I doubt there's anyone here who hasn't seen at least one of his movies. Let me give you some film titles. Put your hand up if you've seen it. Okay, The Birds, Vertigo, Rear Window, The 39 Steps, Marnie, and of course, the most famous of them all, Psycho. Okay, good. I can see you're all familiar with Hitchcock then. Now people assume that Hitchcock was from America, perhaps because he spent so much of his life working in Hollywood, but he was in fact born in London in 1899. He didn't actually emigrate until he was 40 years old. Most film critics would agree that Hitchcock had a huge impact on cinema. And you may be surprised to learn that he started making movies as early as the 1920s, when most films were silent. His first attempt, in 1922, actually ended in disaster. The film was ironically called Number 13, and production stopped at a late stage due to financial problems. But before he left Britain in 1939, he'd already made classics like Blackmail, the first film with sound made in Britain, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and The 39 Steps, and he was considered Britain's top director. So why was Hitchcock so influential? To start with, he pioneered techniques, especially in the genre of the psychological thriller. He was known as the master of suspense. During a career that spanned more than half a century, Hitchcock created a distinctive, perhaps unique style. One of his innovations was to use a camera the way a person watching would. This gave filmgoers the sense that they were voyeurs rather than just viewers. He exploited camera angles and used innovative editing techniques to build suspense and maximize anxiety. His eye for detail was astonishing. Did you know that the famous scene in Psycho, in which Marion is murdered in the shower, took a whole week to film? Yes, a scene little more than a minute long. There were around 60 camera positions, and the set had to constantly be deconstructed and reconstructed. Today, that kind of almost obsessive perfection simply wouldn't be cost-effective. A week filming one scene would blow the budget.
Now you have some time to look at questions 35 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 35 to 40.
So what were Hitchcock films about, and who were some of his typical characters? It would be wrong to say that Hitchcock made horror movies, suspense movies or psychological thrillers, but not horror. Hitchcock rarely showed acts of violence. The effort went into building up tension, creating a sense of unease.
The viewers know that something terrible is going to happen. They don't need to actually see it. Although his stories feature psychopaths, murderers and fugitives on the run, the real strength of his work is the complex examination of his characters. His movies borrow many themes from psychoanalysis, so it's not surprising that his masterpiece is called Psycho. However, a recurring theme in Hitchcock's stories is the twist ending. That's when the story ends in the way viewers least expect it to. I mean, the good guy turns out to be the bad guy, for example. Think of Psycho. It's the element of surprise that makes the end so creepy. Now, Hitchcock's movies feature many other elements of surprise. Daring elements, in fact. Again, I'll refer to Psycho. Marion is the principal character, and it is her that the viewer relates to and empathizes with. Marion has stolen money, and the viewer wants to know if she will get away with her crime or be caught and punished. Suddenly, a third of the way into the story, Marion is murdered, and the entire dynamic changes. The original storyline is put on hold, and a whole new story begins. No longer able to identify with Marion, the viewer begins to empathize with the new principal character, and that, of course, is the murderer, Norman. In this way, Hitchcock manipulates the audience into seeing the story from a whole new perspective. Did you know that Hitchcock played a small part in each of his movies? He always had a cameo role, and this was a very clever move, as it helped him become known. Filmgoers could put a face to the director. Some might even say that before Hitchcock, the director was a far less significant individual in the filmmaking process. Nowadays, however, people go to see a particular director's movie regardless of who's starring in it.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Give it to me.